During our different theories episode in Loki, we have talked about how the new What If animated series is going to be a coherent storyline and that it's going to be canon. So today we're going to really open up our minds here and talk about what if has a canon, and what if sets up a horror version of Avengers Infinity War involving Ultron and the Marvel Zombies. So please strap in and welcome back to another episode of This episode is going to go slightly different than the other ones. I'm going to present a grand theory that I had based on watching the trailers about how the Marvel Zombies and Ultron and all the elements that we're seeing in What If is going to converge into a culmination event that is like a horror version of Infinity War / Endgame. Sofia and Professor Carnes will ask me questions, scrutinize my theories, and also possibly come up with alternate theories to kind of form an almost, if I was Kevin Feige, pitch for What If. So one of the biggest questions that I had is, how does the MCU zombie apocalypse start? Because we know that in the trailers, there's a zombie version of Captain America. We saw zombie Hawkeye and zombie Iron Man in different versions of the promo as well. And one of the questions is, it's such a disturbing storyline from the comics. How are they going to adapt it into the MCU? So here is my basic storyline about how this MCU zombie apocalypse is going to start and how that links together with Ultron to create this culmination event. So first of all, in terms of time frame, this will span from Civil War to Infinity War. So the zombie apocalypse is going to span over years of the MCU canon. So let's start with the beginning of Civil War, the start of the zombie apocalypse. So at the beginning of Captain America's Civil War, the incident was that Crossbones was going to release a biological weapon, but we had no idea what that biological weapon is for. We know that Cap said Rumlow has a biological weapon, but then one of the guys said, I'm going to drop it. And apparently it's going to spread something to the population if it ends up, leaking out. So I've read a couple of Reddit theories that all seem to agree that the zombie apocalypse started during Captain America's Civil War when Crossbones actually unleashed that biological weapon. In other words, what if the Avengers failed to stop Crossbones at the beginning of Civil War and that biological weapon turns everyone into zombies? I am presenting these theories I saw on the internet as well as their authors over here on the screenshot to give them credit for their theories. The links to the original Reddit theories are also posted in the description below in case you're interested in checking them out. So we actually have some kind of evidence for this. According to toy packaging with Marvel Legends, because they always spoil movies, this is what they said. Captain America and his team served as first responders when the zombie apocalypse occurred, but unfortunately, they also became its first victims. So we can assume that whatever Crossbones did to drop this weapon, it might have just influenced Cap and had his team be the zombies first. And that makes sense given the Civil War storyline, because none of the Team Iron Man people, aside from Black Widow, showed up in that very first battle in Civil War. So zombie Cap, and also when we saw it in the trailers, he is in his Civil War costume instead of in his Infinity War Endgame costume. So it'd be only logical to assume that he got infected during the events of Civil War. One evidence that further proves that is that zombie Hawkeye from the poster of What If is also in his purple Civil War costume, which is the last costume he had before the Infinity War / Endgame Ronin costume. So the next thing that probably happens is Team Iron Man becomes alert and tries to fight Team Cap. So it's a version of Civil War, but it's essentially the zombie hunters versus the zombies. The term zombie hunter is going to become important later on, but I'll just drop that word for now. But unfortunately, they become affected as well. And this explains that Iron Man zombie from the trailer. Spider-Man and Vision escape because Vision literally can't become a zombie because he's a vibranium robot. We know that Spider-Man didn't get affected because in another toy, he has a cloak of levitation. Everybody thought it was what if Spider-Man became the Sorcerer Supreme, or what if Spider-Man became Doctor Strange? But the toy packaging calls him Zombie Hunter Spidey. He is one of the survivors in a zombie apocalypse, and he is hunting them down. So what if Spider-Man joins Tony's team, just like the original Civil War storyline, but then he survives the zombie apocalypse, and now he's hunting all the other zombies? We also can tell that maybe Scott Lang becomes affected, so they must decapitate him in order to preserve him. Because we saw a trailer shot of Scott's head in a jar, and everybody was like, that was jarring. Like, how did he become like that? Maybe it's a zombie apocalypse. And the similar things have happened in the Marvel Zombies comics where there's only a head of that person who was infected, and they disinfect that person so that person doesn't really have any hunger anymore. So we see that Spider-Man retrieves the cloak of levitation from the Sanctum while seeking help, becoming zombie hunter Spidey. So now 2 years have passed, and we have come to Infinity War. This is where things get really crazy. Thanos' army arrives on Earth just like they did in the original Infinity War, and the Avengers infect them, turning them into zombies. This actually has evidence because in that shot with zombie Iron Man's wearing his Mark 50 armor from Infinity War, and we also saw a glimpse of zombie Ebony Maw and zombie Cull Obsidian next to zombie Iron. So we know that at least some of Thanos' Black Order will become zombies in the Marvel Zombies storyline. So we see that the remaining Avengers, including zombie hunter Spidey, and some of the other Avengers must assemble again to fight the zombies. And we know that Winter Soldier will be involved in fighting the zombies. You saw that scene on the train with him in his Infinity War costume fighting Captain America. Also, another thing that could happen is Ultron has Infinity Stones in What If, and it seems like he has finally taken over Vision and become the ultimate Ultron that we all wanted from the MCU. And we saw that the Battle of Wakanda in the What If show is Killmonger teaming up with Shuri, fighting a bunch of Ultron sentries. So what if Ultron actually assembles these Marvel zombies and assembles them with his army so that essentially Ultron takes over Thanos' army? Instead of Thanos being the person with the Infinity Stones, it's Ultron being the big boss of the Infinity Saga, leading zombie Thanos, zombie Avengers to fight the Avengers. It's almost a extremely loose adaptation of the Donny Cates Thor run, bringing zombies into our main universe and having a really strong villain leading them. And this is our Infinity War, where it's the Avengers versus zombies and Ultron. And the end of it is perhaps the Avengers steal the Infinity Stones from Ultron, and instead of wiping half of Thanos' army out, they wipe out the zombie virus, ending the zombie apocalypse.
Now I'm going to be upset if they don't make that story. That's great, Harry. I will be so happy if it plays out along the lines of what you've described. I'm a big fan of the Marvel Zombies series, and this all sounds really plausible. I think those are really creative tie-ins to, I mean, not just the toy observations, but tying in this story to the sort of plot points in Civil War is what makes this most persuasive. Like, yeah, how do you get zombies in the MCU? So here's my question for you. I think this is an immensely persuasive, theory. But how does this tie back into the main MCU? So this is canon. In what way is it canon? How do you get us back to the main MCU continuity, which is pretty fragmented right now, but presumably still, this is still outside of what we've seen so far. So how does it come back to the MCU, or does it at all? Can it just be a really engaging story happening in another universe?
Yeah, so that's one of the questions I wrote down in my notes. How would this have repercussions in the MCU? And I have a theory that I really like about it. So we know that What If is going to be a multiverse story, and whatever it's going to do is possibly going to lead into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. One of the things that Marvel marketed Multiverse of Madness as is Marvel's first horror movie. And I think bringing scary realities into the MCU, making them canon to the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse now, the MCM instead of the MCU now, I think will be very compelling. Maybe the zombies will be an alternate reality that they travel to in Multiverse of Madness, and we'll see the live action debut of these Marvel zombies.
Yeah, that ties in pretty well, actually, and would make sense how they want to do the horror genre. I guess my worry with it would be is that, Marvel always wants to keep that like PG-13 rating. And definitely with something like zombies and horror, you definitely want to go, it would be awesome to see Marvel going a bit more over the top with it with the makeup and the violence. I don't think it would happen, but I think definitely zombie stories work better if you're not like restricted by that like PG-13 rating, or I don't know what you think about that.
So there's actually quite a bit of zombie movies that are rated PG-13. Most notable examples being World War Z starring Brad Pitt and I Am Legend starring Will Smith. And these are two movies that are pretty scary, with a lot of zombie action, violence and everything like that. That seems in line with anything they're going to do with the MCU zombies.
No, yeah, I think you're right. Bringing that example of like World War Z. Yeah, I'm actually pretty surprised that's PG-13. And I guess, yeah, making it more focused, not on the gore and the violence, but more on like the emotional drama and the psychological thriller of like seeing these characters that you love, become like these monsters, and focusing more on that aspect. You can definitely make that work without like the gore and the violence the psychological like trauma of all that would probably be the most important.
I think I Am Legend is exactly in that category too, Sophia and Harry. And so that makes me sort of optimistic that you can tell a really compelling zombie story without it just being about gore. And I'm sure there'll be some good jump scares, but it sounds like they'll still be able to get that PG-13 rating and tell a great, a story that really shakes you up in the way that horror as kind of a subgenre of speculative fiction, like it's supposed to sort of enlarge your anxieties and help you interrogate them. And I bet they could do a really good job of that with this story. So Harry, as you were, as we're thinking about sort of how this ties back into the main MCU, it would be one thing that I think might, I would add to this theory is that it might end with the bad guy winning, which would be sort of in line with the way the first Marvel Zombies run. Not to spoil it, but it doesn't have a happy ending. And that's part, again, part of what makes it such a compelling story. And I could see that really nicely setting up a conflict that has to be addressed by future multiverse, shows or movies. Okay, let's say your Infinity Stone powered zombie backed Ultron wins, takes over the universe, and then thinks, okay, well, what do I do next? And then he learns there are other universes. He gets a hold of the Darkhold or something, and learns about multiverse travel, and now he's a threat that has to be dealt with. Gosh, wouldn't that be rewarding to see him return to the live action MCU, super powered? I mean, you talk about how do you top Thanos? Zombie powered Infinity Gauntlet Ultron would probably be pretty high on the list of things that could top Thanos, and would make for one heck of really exciting story if they do it in Doctor Strange.
A long time ago, we have came up with this theory that at the end of WandaVision, Wanda's gonna have to kill Vision all over again. And one of the theories we had was Rebirth Vision is actually a version of Ultron. That is, what if Ultron took over Vision's body, then Wanda has to fight him really to evolve from that. So it seems like Wanda's arc in WandaVision is moving on from Vision's death and kind of moving on beyond that trauma, and sort of that arc we're going to see continue in Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. So we know that What If is getting a season 2, and Loki also got a season 2. And what did Loki season 1 end up with? A cliffhanger, a pretty unhappy ending for Loki in season 1. And I could totally see What If, because it's going to tie into Doctor Strange, What If also ending on a cliffhanger to make people be like, I gotta see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness now. So bringing back that whole Vision theory, I actually think that Professor Carnes' theory about Ultron surviving What If and winning What If will be an extremely compelling story, because we know that the Ultron in this universe is the one who took over Vision's body. So it's essentially a version of Vision, but with Ultron's soul. What if this version of Ultron lives to be the antagonist of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? And we know that who else is going to be in Multiverse of Madness? Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff. So it's going to have a huge battle, not only a rematch between Wanda and Ultron, but also an inevitable battle between Wanda and Vision, who now evil Vision representing everything with her trauma, because her arc isn't quite over at the end of WandaVision. And having her face off once again with this monstrous character who is a threat to the entire multiverse and who explains her past, present, and future with this whole Ultron, Infinity Stone, and Vision thing, it could provide an extremely compelling character arc for Wanda.
I didn't want to like this prediction when you started, Harry, but that would be really a powerful seed. I'm so tired of Wanda having to just endure the worst that the MCU has for a character. I'm so tired of Wanda having to lose Vision over and over again. And I just want to give them a break. But that would be, that immediately hits you really hard thinking about her having to go with Ultron, Infinity Stones, Vision, all in one character. And if she's got Billy and Tommy in tow, that could potentially just add another layer to the family dynamic that could be something that really hits home.
No, yeah, I'm kind of on the same boat. I definitely don't want Wanda to go through something like once again, but this could make sense, like with where her arc is going now and what would happen in the multiverse of madness. So I think it makes sense, and I would like some like confrontation again to like what happened in Age of Ultron for her to like kind of go through that and reckon with that again. So I think it would make sense for her character. It'd be something I'd really want to see.
It could be satisfying too if she gets the final, resolution. If she finally beats Ultron herself, that could be sort of, that could be finally a good ending for Wanda after, just misery. I mean, she, I'm not sure there's an MCU character who's had it worse. Maybe like Nebula, but she's definitely earned a break and a nice, a final resolution. So yeah. Beating Ultron, but then she can't beat, so she'll beat Ultron and Doctor Strange, but he'll have to win in What If for that to happen.
Thank you again for tuning into a new episode of Different Theories. You can support us by liking and sharing and subscribing. We'll see you in another episode of Different Theories.